The stars were quiet. In the far edge of the galaxy, the alien race known as the Galactic Empire watched many worlds. They were powerful, proud, and cold. Their ships moved like shadows through space. They believed they ruled everything. One day, the Galactic scanners found a small blue planet. It was called Earth. The computers ran quick checks. They scanned Earth's radio waves, satellites, weapons, and military systems. The final result came within minutes. Primitive species. Low threat. The report was sent to the Galactic High Command. A board officer signed it. Another filed it away. Earth was now listed under a long list of unimportant planets. But one Galactic commander, Varric, felt something strange. He looked at Earth's data again. The planet was strange. Too noisy. Too emotional. Humans always seemed to be fighting, but also inventing. They had thousands of languages, millions of stories. They sent strange signals into space. Music, laughter, war sounds, love songs. They are chaotic, Varric said quietly. The young officer next to him laughed. They are weak, he replied. No faster than light ships. No plasma weapons. No threat. But Varric wasn't sure. He asked for permission to observe Earth for longer. The request was denied. Not worth the fuel, the reply said. Earth is nothing. So, like many before him, Varric moved on. His ship turned away from Earth. But Earth had already noticed the Galactics, and Earth never forgot. 2 months later, on the other side of the Galactic Empire, a small outer colony named Lyrox-9 stopped sending signals. At first, no one cared. The colony was new and small. Maybe the communication system was broken. Maybe it was a storm. But after 2 days, a scout ship was sent. The scout ship never returned. Now the High Command paid attention. A second colony, Carnus 3, also went silent. And then a third. The Galactic leaders held a meeting. Cold lights glowed on their faces as they stared at the map. Red dots began to blink. Colonies that had stopped responding. The dots were spreading. Slowly, carefully. Someone was removing their worlds. One by one. Varric sat in the back of the meeting. He remembered Earth. He remembered the strange feeling he had. He raised his voice. We must check Earth. Laughter filled the room. Earth? One general said. That little blue rock. Varric's face stayed calm. It is the only unknown variable. But again, his warning was ignored. Outside the meeting, Varric sat alone in his ship and opened the old Earth report. He looked at the pictures again. Humans waving at satellites. Children dancing. Old tanks rolling across dirt roads. Fireworks in the sky. He zoomed in on one image. It showed a group of humans in dark uniforms. They were not smiling. Behind them was a strange building, half buried under a mountain. The words on the sign read, Project Prometheus. Eyes always watching. Varric didn't know what it meant, but something about those eyes made him shiver. Meanwhile, on a secret listening post near the outer edge of Sarnak space, a technician sat alone. He was bored. Nothing ever happened there. But then something strange came through the signal systems. A short message. Weak. Human frequency. The technician played it again. It was a voice. Calm. Human. Clear. Target complete. Awaiting next coordinates. The message repeated. Target complete. Awaiting next coordinates. The technician called his superior. The message was sent to High Command, but no one knew what it meant. Who was the target? Who sent the message? What were the next coordinates? They didn't know. But Varric knew one thing for sure. Earth was not what it seemed. The cold silence of space was familiar to the Galactics. Their empire stretched across hundreds of stars, and they had ruled for centuries. They believed in control, in order, in fear. But now, they were hearing something they never expected. Nothing. No signals, no distress calls, no trade routes active. One by one, their outer colonies had gone quiet. Lyrox 9, Carnus 3, Telin. Then Vorix Reach, each planet, each station, gone dark like a candle blown out. No explosions, no enemies spotted, just silence. Commander Virik stood inside his command room, eyes locked on the holomap of the galaxy. Red circles marked each missing colony. The pattern was spreading inwards, slowly but surely, like a hand reaching into the heart of the Xarnax Empire. "We still have no contact?" he asked. "No, Commander," replied his officer. "We sent scout drones. All were lost. No returns." Virik's fingers tightened behind his back. The crew in the room shifted uncomfortably. The silence wasn't just outside. It was crawling inside their minds now, eating at their confidence. And then something even more terrifying happened. A fleet disappeared. 30 warships, sent to investigate the last known location of Telin, simply vanished. No wreckage, no distress signals, no sign of battle. It was impossible. It was unthinkable. It was happening. High Command finally called for a special emergency assembly. The Grand Chamber, buried deep inside the Xarnax capital planet, echoed with sharp voices and fear behind stone-faced pride. The leaders spoke in cold, careful words, but their eyes showed panic. How can this happen? Who is behind this? No one has the technology to touch our empire. A voice in the room said, it could be the Zarine. Another argued, the humans. Impossible. Their planet barely defends itself. At that word, humans, Virik turned sharply. He stepped forward and activated the display. The room dimmed. The image of Earth hovered in the air. Blue oceans, green lands, clouds swirling like soft white armor. This planet, Virik said, we marked it as low threat. But their signal appeared on our frequencies, and now our colonies are falling one by one. The general stared. One laughed. We watched them. They are weak. They argue among themselves. They are divided. Virik replied calmly, maybe the division was part of the plan. The laughter stopped. He continued, what if humans pretended to be weak? What if they showed us chaos on purpose, so we'd ignore them? An admiral scoffed. That would require generations of planning. Lies, deception, unified secrecy across their entire planet. Yes, Virik nodded. Exactly. They didn't believe him. But they also didn't stop him. So Virik returned to his ship and gave one quiet order. Send a cloaked drone to Earth. Deep orbit scan. Do not engage. Just observe. The drone reached Earth in 6 days. What it saw was impossible. From space, Earth looked normal. Cities, oceans, storms, radio signals filled the air. But underneath the surface, hidden in shadows, under ice caps, beneath deserts, were structures, factories, hangars, energy cores, entire bases blacked out from satellites and sensors. Worse, the drone detected movement in deep space near Earth's moon. Strange objects drifted there, huge, cold, and quiet. Ships, not one or two, hundreds, all cloaked, all human, all waiting. Before the drone could return, its feed cut out. Gone. No explosion, just static. When Virik received the last image, his heart froze. It was a human battleship. Its shape was not sleek or graceful like Xarnax ships. It was brutal, angular, covered in plates of armor, painted black. No markings, no lights. But it had one thing etched on its side in bold white letters. Ghost Armada. The name alone carried weight, like it had been hidden from history, like it wasn't meant to be seen. Virik played the last second of the feed again. Just before the image faded, a signal flashed. Human language, one phrase. We are awake now. Virik sat in silence for a long time. The room felt colder. For the first time in his life, he felt fear, not of an enemy's strength, but of their patience, their intelligence, their revenge. He turned to his communication officer. "Send a warning to High Command," he said. "Tell them Earth is not what we thought." "What message should I send, Commander?" Virik looked out into space, toward the blue planet that had fooled them all. "Tell them, we made a mistake, and we may not survive it." The truth was finally clear. Earth had been underestimated, dismissed as a low-level threat. The Xarnax had made the fatal mistake of thinking their technology, their superiority, would be enough to keep them safe. But now, as each colony fell silent, and the whispers of Earth's capabilities began to echo in the corridors of the Xarnax Empire, Virik knew the Xarnax Empire was on the verge of collapse. In the heart of the Xarnax fleet, Virik paced in his personal quarters. His mind raced, analyzing every piece of data, every tiny hint that could explain what was happening. The messages from Earth were cryptic, but they all seemed to point to one thing. They had been preparing for this moment for a long time. The humans had hidden their strength in plain sight. They had intentionally kept their technology just advanced enough to survive, but never enough to alarm the Xarnax. Virik thought back to the early reports. The humans were so divided, so chaotic. They were constantly fighting wars amongst themselves. Their governments changed like the wind. They were a world of conflict, of survival, but they were also survivors. And that, Virik realized, was their greatest strength. The humans had learned to hide. They had learned to make themselves appear weak, vulnerable even. The galaxy believed Earth was just a blue and green rock, full of chaos, and people struggling with their own flaws. They had made themselves insignificant, but the truth was more terrifying. The humans had learned how to survive by waiting. They had built their power in secret. In underground bunkers, in hidden bases, in long-forgotten ruins. Over centuries, they had recovered alien technology from crashed ships, Xarnax ships, among others, and studied them. They had reverse-engineered the technology, learning its secrets, improving it. And now, Earth was ready. Virik sat before his command table and called up the data on Project Prometheus, a name that had haunted his mind since the moment he first saw it. It was an old Earth initiative, one that had been buried under layers of secrecy. Virik had seen the name before in his research, but it never seemed important. Not until now. The project was humanity's answer to a question that had haunted them for centuries. How do you fight an unstoppable enemy? They had designed weapons capable of destroying entire fleets. They had developed cloaking technology that even the Xarnax couldn't detect. They had constructed deep spaceships, invisible to scanners, capable of launching devastating attacks. But the true secret of Project Prometheus wasn't in the weapons. It was in their patience. The humans had known for years that one day they would need to fight back. They had known that their survival depended on their ability to adapt, to strike when the time was right. So they bided their time. They built their fleets, their weapons, their strategies, in the shadows, waiting for the moment when they would no longer be ignored. And now, that moment had come. Virik's thoughts were interrupted by a sharp beep from his command console. A new message had come through. A coded transmission from Earth. His heart raced as he read the message, each word hitting him like a blow. The message was simple, but its meaning was clear. We are not afraid anymore. The time has come. The humans had made their move. Virik's mind raced. He needed to act. The entire Xarnax fleet needed to be mobilized, or they would be crushed before they even realized what had happened. But as he prepared to make the call, something stopped him. He thought back to the reports he had seen earlier, the images of the cloaked ships in orbit around Earth's moon. The Ghost Armada, as the humans had called it. It wasn't just a fleet of ships. It was something more. Something ancient. The humans had learned from their past mistakes, just as the Xarnax had. They had learned how to fight smarter, not harder. They didn't just attack. They waited, observed, and then struck with devastating precision. They had learned to use their weaknesses as strengths. It was a strategy that had taken the Xarnax by surprise. Virek's mind snapped back to the present. He had to warn the High Command. But even as he moved to send the message, a chill ran down his spine. Earth had already proven they were capable of things no one had imagined. And now they were coming for the heart of the Empire. Virek's fingers hovered over the command console. Should he send the message, or was it too late? Before he could make his decision, another message came through, a report from the front lines. The scout fleet that had been sent to investigate the missing colonies had found something that would change everything. The scout fleet had found an empty planet, a dead world, completely destroyed. No signs of battle, no signs of any Xarnax ships having been lost. Just a planet, wiped clean, as though nothing had ever lived there. But the most chilling part of the report wasn't the empty planet. It was what was left behind. On the surface, there was a single message, carved into the ground, in bold letters. Earth was here. Now you know the cost of underestimating us. Varric stared at the message in shock. Earth wasn't just playing a game. They were sending a message. They were ready to fight. And this time, they wouldn't lose. The Xarnax Empire was no stranger to war. They had crushed entire civilizations before. Their ships, their technology, their strategies were designed for one thing: control. They were the apex predators of the galaxy. And yet, as Varric watched the report come in, a deep, unsettling feeling clawed at his insides. Earth was not like any enemy they had ever faced. It had always been a planet of chaos, a planet where every nation was divided, fighting amongst themselves for resources, for power. The humans had always seemed weak in their struggles, but now it was clear they had been preparing. Varric's mind raced back to the message left on the destroyed planet. Earth was here. Now you know the cost of underestimating us. The image of that simple, bold text haunted him. He had seen such messages before, but not from a species as primitive as humans, not from a race that had been dismissed as insignificant. Earth had been underestimated, and now the price was being paid. The transmission from the scout fleet had been brief, but the message was loud and clear. Earth had awakened. The weapons they had been silently building, the technology they had stolen from ancient fallen empires, had been unleashed. Their fleets, the Ghost Armada, were now ready to strike. The message was simple, and it wasn't just a threat. It was a declaration of war. The fleet would come for them, but not with brute force. The humans had learned, over the centuries, how to fight with precision, with patience. They knew that overwhelming strength was not enough. They understood the value of strategy. Varric's thoughts were interrupted by a harsh chime from his console. He turned sharply to see an incoming transmission. This time, it wasn't from the front lines. It was from the High Command. Commander Varric. The voice was cold, the tone sharp. We are preparing for a full-scale offensive. You are to return to the capital immediately. Your observations have been noted. The Empire is acting. Varric's jaw tightened. He knew that the High Command was still in denial. They still thought they could overpower Earth with their might. They were underestimating the humans, just as they had before. He opened his mouth to speak, but something held him back. The report had made it clear. Earth was already ahead of them. The humans didn't need to fight with overwhelming numbers. They only needed to strike at the right time, in the right place. He closed the channel and stared at the holomap of the galaxy. The red circles marked the missing colonies, the silent planets. The pattern of Earth's ships moving slowly toward the heart of the Xarnax Empire was undeniable. The humans were making their move, and Varric knew that the Xarnax, with all their power and technology, were not prepared for it. On the surface of Earth, in a hidden underground base, far from the prying eyes of any Xarnax sensor, a group of human leaders gathered in silence. They had known this day would come, and they had prepared for it. The war they had fought amongst themselves had forged a people who understood the meaning of survival. The room was filled with the sounds of quiet murmurs, voices speaking in hushed tones, a far cry from the loud, chaotic world that had once been Earth. They had learned to speak in whispers, to make their plans with care, so no one would hear them coming. They knew the Xarnax were watching, always watching, but they had also learned that sometimes the greatest weapon was to let the enemy think they were in control, to let them feel secure, before delivering the crushing blow. The leader of the human resistance, General Carver, stood at the center of the room. His eyes were hardened, focused. He had seen enough of war to know what was coming. The Xarnax had made their move, and now it was time to respond. They think they are the apex predators, Carver said quietly, his voice carrying across the room. They think they have all the pieces in place, but we've been studying them, learning their patterns. They've grown too comfortable. He paused, letting the silence settle. We won't be underestimated again. We won't wait for them to strike first. A map of the galaxy flickered to life on the screen behind him. Earth was marked by a blinking light, surrounded by hundreds of empty, silent worlds. But the humans were not without a plan. They had prepared in secret, building a fleet in the shadows, cloaking their ships from the prying eyes of the Xarnax. This is the moment, Carver continued. We'll take the fight to them. It's time to remind the galaxy who they're dealing with. The room filled with murmurs of agreement. They were ready. The humans had learned to fight with everything they had, and they had learned how to survive. Now, they were going to make the Xarnax regret ever thinking of Earth as a low-threat world. Back in the heart of the Xarnax Empire, Virik stared at the holomap again. This time, he wasn't just looking at the galaxy. He was looking at the line of Earth's ships, their fleet moving with an eerie precision. The humans were coming, and they weren't going to stop. Virik's mind raced. He had seen the signs. Earth was no longer a planet of chaos. They had evolved. They had prepared. And now, they were coming for everything. The question was, would the Xarnax Empire be able to stop them? As the lights in his command room flickered, Virik knew the answer. He had made his mistake once before. But this time, he couldn't afford to be wrong. Earth was coming, and the Empire would either fall or rise with their strength. The vast expanse of space was eerily quiet as the Xarnax fleet prepared for the inevitable. The silence was broken only by the soft hum of engines, the low buzz of communication systems, and the faint peeping of warning signals as the fleet, once confident in its dominance, now faced the undeniable threat of Earth's rise. Virik stood in the command center of his flagship, staring at the dark void ahead. The Ghost Armada was real. The human ships, once thought to be mere myths or exaggerated reports, were here, and they were heading straight for the heart of the Xarnax Empire. But the most terrifying part wasn't just the sheer number of ships. It was the way the humans operated. Their strategy had been one of deception, of patience. They had been hiding, waiting for the right moment to strike, and now that moment had arrived. The Xarnax had never seen an enemy like this, one that thought and fought with the precision of a predator, not the brute force of a conqueror. Virik tapped his fingers against the armrest of his chair, his mind racing. He had learned a harsh truth in the past few weeks. The Xarnax were not invincible. They had fallen into the trap of arrogance, of thinking their technology and military might would always win the day. But Earth had shown them the error of that belief. The Xarnax had underestimated the humans, and now they were paying the price. Commander Virik, a voice called out from behind. Virik turned to see his chief strategist, Zerk, stepping forward. We've received another transmission from Earth. Virik's gaze hardened. What now? Zerk hesitated, then activated the screen. The message was simple, yet it spoke volumes. A single line of text appeared. Your empire will fall, just like the others before you. There was no threat in the words, no boasting. Just cold, calculated certainty. The humans were not afraid. They weren't even trying to scare the Xarnax anymore. They were simply stating a fact. Virik felt a chill crawl down his spine. The message echoed the truth he had been fighting to deny. Earth had prepared for this war long before the Xarnax had even considered it a possibility. And now Earth's fleet was closing in on the Xarnax capital planet, their ships weaving through the stars with unnerving precision. "We need to act fast," Zerk continued. "We have no idea what their fleet is capable of. Our forces are spread thin across the galaxy, and our resources are running low. If we don't engage soon, we'll lose our edge." Varric didn't answer immediately. He stared at the message on the screen. The humans were bold. Too bold. And yet, they had a calm confidence that unsettled him. They didn't just think they would win. They knew they would. He turned to Zerk, his expression unreadable. "Prepare the fleet, but we will not engage directly. Not yet." Zerk raised an eyebrow. "Commander, we cannot underestimate them any longer," Varric said. "We need to learn more about their strategy. We need to understand how they fight before we commit to a battle we may not win." Varric turned back to the holographic map of the galaxy, his mind processing every detail, every piece of information. Earth was no longer just a planet. It had become a ticking time bomb, a force that could destroy everything the Xarnax had worked so hard to build. If they didn't find a way to counter the humans' tactics, the entire empire would crumble. Meanwhile, on Earth, General Carver stood in front of a massive, glowing map of space, his hands resting on the table. His fleet was ready. The Ghost Armada, once a myth, was now real. Hundreds of ships, each one cloaked and waiting in the shadows, had been deployed. The humans had learned the Xarnax's habits, their weaknesses, and they had built a fleet designed not for brute force but for precision. "We have one chance," Carver said to the room full of officers and strategists. "We've spent decades preparing for this. Every battle, every conflict we've faced has been leading to this moment. We will strike fast. We will strike hard. And we will make sure they never see us coming." The officers nodded in silent agreement. They knew the stakes. The Xarnax were a powerful enemy, but they were not invincible. The humans had learned that the most dangerous weapons were not those that could destroy entire planets, but those that could infiltrate and outsmart their opponents. Carver's voice grew sharper as he gave the final orders. "We will disable their communications first. If we cut off their ability to coordinate, they'll be blind. Then we strike their ships one by one, taking out their most powerful war vessels. We make sure they understand that Earth is not a weak planet. We are a force to be reckoned with." With that, the countdown began. The Ghost Armada, now fully activated, began to move through the stars, stealthily approaching the Xarnax fleet. Earth's ships were designed for one thing: to strike from the shadows, to attack when the enemy was most vulnerable, and to vanish before the enemy had a chance to retaliate. As the fleet neared the Xarnax capital, a wave of tension rippled through the command room. The humans were about to show the galaxy what they were capable of, and the Xarnax would never know what hit them. Back in the heart of the Xarnax Empire, Varric watched in disbelief as Earth's ships began to make their move. They didn't attack all at once. Instead, they struck from multiple angles, picking off Xarnax warships one by one, their movements swift and silent, leaving nothing but destruction in their wake. The first message Varric received was a brief, panicked transmission from one of the fleet commanders. "We've lost communications. We're under attack. There's nothing we can do." "It's the humans. They found a way to infiltrate our defenses." Varric's heart pounded. The humans had done the impossible. They had bypassed Xarnax defenses and were now dismantling their fleet piece by piece. "They're using their own tactics against us," Varric muttered. He had always believed the Xarnax could outfight any enemy, but Earth had proven him wrong. "Status report," he demanded. Zerk quickly scanned the reports. "We've lost contact with 3 major fleets. Several others are severely damaged. They're using cloaked ships and targeting our command centers." Varric's mind spun. He knew the humans were skilled, but this was something else. They were fighting with a precision that even the Xarnax had never experienced. "We need to adapt," Virik said. "Prepare the fleet to regroup. We may have underestimated Earth, but we won't make the same mistake again." But deep down, he knew it might already be too late. Virik stood at the helm of his flagship, the harsh lights above casting long shadows across his face. The reports were coming in fast now, each one more disastrous than the last. The Ghost Armada was relentless. The Xarnax fleet, once invincible in its might, was now falling apart under the weight of Earth's unseen assault. Entire fleets had gone dark, communication channels remained silent, and the Xarnax command was in disarray. It was happening. The collapse was real. The Xarnax Empire had always prided itself on control, on dominating the galaxy with an iron fist. Now they were being picked off one by a species they had considered primitive. Earth was no longer just a nuisance. They were a force. Virik clenched his fists, a fire burning in his chest. He had been wrong. He had underestimated them, just as so many others had before him. The humans, with their strange, unpredictable ways, had proven that they were not to be dismissed. They had learned from their mistakes, built upon their failures, and now they were on the cusp of destroying the empire that had once ruled the galaxy. He turned toward Zerk, who had been pacing anxiously across the command room. "We have to stop them. We can't just keep reacting. We need to go on the offensive." Zerk looked up, his face a mask of uncertainty. "Commander, our forces are scattered. The Ghost Armada is everywhere, but they're attacking in small, precise waves. They're targeting our weakest points, and we have no way of anticipating their next move." Virik's mind raced. The humans were adapting faster than they could track them. It wasn't just about brute force. It was about knowing where to strike, when to strike, and how to leave no trace behind. They had turned the very tools of warfare into a game of shadows. He paused, thinking of the next move. "We know their fleet's movements now. We know how they think. It's time we do the same. We'll send a decoy fleet, draw them into a trap. We won't engage fully, but we'll lead them into an ambush they won't see coming." Zerk's eyes widened. "A decoy? That's risky. What if it doesn't work?" Virik turned, his expression hardening. "We have no other choice. If we don't act now, we will lose everything. Earth has already shown us their hand. They think they're in control. It's time to remind them that they're not the only ones who can play this game." Zerk hesitated for a moment, but nodded. "I'll get the orders out immediately." As Zerk left to carry out his orders, Virik stood by the large view screen, staring out at the stars. The Xarnax Empire had been built on the foundation of fear. Fear of their might, fear of their technology, fear of their power. But Earth had shattered that illusion. The humans were fearless, and they weren't fighting for control or conquest. They were fighting for survival. That was something that Xarnax had never truly understood, and now it was their greatest weakness. On Earth, General Carver stood in front of a large, transparent table. The map of the galaxy was now dotted with small red lights, marking the positions of Xarnax fleets that had been wiped out or were still under attack. He traced one of the lights with his finger, his eyes narrowing as he considered the Xarnax's next move. The Ghost Armada had made tremendous progress, but they weren't invincible. They were operating on the assumption that the Xarnax would always be one step behind, always reacting. That's how Earth had won so far, but it couldn't continue forever. The Xarnax would catch on. They would adapt. And when that happened, the humans needed to be ready. "We need to push harder," Carver said, turning to his officers. "The Xarnax are regrouping. They'll make their move soon, and we can't afford to be caught off guard. We need to force them to act, to make mistakes." One of the officers spoke up. "General, we've tracked their movements. They're preparing for a major counterattack. But they're hesitant. They don't know how to approach us. We're outnumbered, but we have the advantage of surprise." Carver nodded. "That advantage won't last forever. We need to keep them on the defensive, force them to react instead of plan. We can't give them a chance to strike first." The officers exchanged looks, knowing full well what the cost of failure would be. They couldn't afford to make mistakes. They were already running out of time. The Xarnax were a formidable foe, and every moment they wasted gave the Empire a chance to regroup and retaliate. But there was no going back. Earth had already crossed the point of no return. "Prepare the fleet," Carver ordered. "We hit them before they have a chance to react. Strike hard and strike fast. We can't let them regain control of this war." The orders were swiftly passed down. The Ghost Armada was ready for the next phase, and Earth's forces were determined to finish what they had started. The humans were not fighting for glory or power. They were fighting for survival, and they would do whatever it took to ensure they came out on top. Back on the Xarnax flagship, Virek's plan was set in motion. The decoy fleet, a small but powerful force, was deployed to lead the humans into a trap. The hope was that the humans would take the bait, follow the decoy fleet into an ambush, where they would be surrounded by the full might of the Xarnax fleet. But as the plan unfolded, something began to feel wrong. The humans weren't reacting as expected. The decoy fleet engaged, but the humans did not pursue. Instead, they scattered, moving in small, unpredictable groups. They were not following the pattern the Xarnax had anticipated. Instead of attacking head-on, they were constantly changing direction, throwing off the Xarnax's ability to predict their next move. Virek's frustration grew. This was not how the humans were supposed to behave. They were supposed to be predictable. They were supposed to fight with overwhelming force, like every other species that Xarnax had crushed before. But these humans, these terrifyingly resourceful humans, were refusing to play by the rules. One of the Xarnax commanders spoke up, a voice of desperation in the comms. "Commander Virek, the humans are adapting faster than we anticipated. Our ships are being picked off one by one. It's chaos out here. We can't keep up with them." Virek clenched his jaw. This wasn't a battle anymore. This was a hunt, and the Xarnax were the prey. "We need to regroup," Virek said through gritted teeth. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Earth's tactics are more dangerous than we thought." But deep down, Virek knew the truth. The Xarnax Empire was already on the brink of collapse. The humans had not just learned to fight, they had learned to win. The stars above Xarnax Prime flickered like cold embers, silent witnesses to the fall of an empire. Virek stood in the ruins of the central command chamber, shattered glass and twisted metal all around him. What was once the heart of a galactic superpower had become a symbol of its defeat. The screens that used to flash with the positions of thousands of fleets now displayed only static. Communications were lost. Allies had turned silent. Whole sectors gone dark. It had started with whispers, fleets not responding, stations going offline. Then came the confirmed reports. Orbital defenses neutralized without warning, command ships destroyed in precision strikes, and entire worlds simply vanishing from the network. Earth had not just attacked the Xarnax military. They had targeted its mind, its structure, its coordination, its belief in superiority. And now, as Virek stood in the heart of silence, he realized something far worse than defeat. They had never truly understood humanity. He turned toward the broken data terminal still flickering faintly. A final message, intercepted from Earth's high command, had been looping over and over again. "This is not vengeance. This is justice for every planet you burned, for every species you silenced, for every child who looked at your ships in the sky and knew fear before they knew hope." It wasn't about territory, not for humans. It wasn't about revenge, or pride, or galactic dominance. It was about making sure no empire would ever again think of marking Earth low threat. Virek closed his eyes. For so long, that Xarnax had watched other species crumble under their rule. They thought themselves gods, immortal rulers of the stars. And yet, It was this one backwater species from a blue world on the edge of a spiral arm that had undone it all. Back on Earth, General Carver walked through the command center, now calm for the first time in months. Reports were still flowing in, but they were no longer urgent cries for backup or desperate coordinates of lost ships. Instead, they were confirmations. The Xarnax command was broken. The Empire had fractured. Remnants of their fleet had either fled or surrendered. Systems once under Xarnax control were rising up in rebellion, emboldened by Earth's resistance. Carver stopped in front of a large holoprojection of the galaxy. Earth, once just a small dot in a vast sea of stars, now burned like a beacon. Not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as survivors. Behind him, a younger officer approached. "Sir, the last of the Ghost Armada is returning. No losses reported. The mission is complete." Carver nodded, but his gaze remained on the galaxy map. "Have we heard anything from Virik?" The officer shook his head. "No, sir. Their command center has gone dark. If he's still alive, he's hiding." "Good," Carver said. "Let him live with what he saw. Let him tell others what humans are capable of when they're pushed too far." On a forgotten world, far from any known star lanes, Virik wandered the wilderness alone. The surviving remnants of the Xarnax elite had gone into hiding, scattered across dead planets and asteroids like frightened ghosts. There was no structure, no order, just fear. Rumors spoke of humans still hunting, eliminating hidden Xarnax outposts to prevent any resurgence. But it wasn't just fear of destruction that haunted them. It was the realization that Earth had become something new. Not just a planet, not just a species. A warning. Children of other alien civilizations would one day hear stories not of the Xarnax Empire, but of the humans, of how a world once ignored and mocked rose from the ashes to become a shadow in the stars, a force that turned predators into prey. And Virik, broken and wandering, knew that this was their legacy now. Not the monuments, not the fleets, but the fear in every surviving Xarnax's eyes when they looked at the stars and wondered, "Are the humans watching?" He looked up at the night sky, and for the first time in his long life, Virik felt something he had never felt before. Not rage, not shame, but awe. Because Earth had taught the galaxy one final truth. Underestimating humanity is the last mistake anyone ever makes.